Have you ever heard of the phrase, never outshine the master? Maybe you've even used it before. But do you really know what it means? The phrase, never outshine the master, is a popular proverb that is used to describe a situation where someone is trying to impress others but ends up making themselves look bad in the process. It's a warning to those who might be tempted to show off or boast because it can end up backfiring on them. So why should you never outshine the master? Let's explore this proverb and its meaning through an interesting story. Once upon a time, there was a king who decided to hold a grand ball. He invited all the nobles and dignitaries from around the kingdom, and he planned for it to be the most spectacular event of the year. There would be delicious food, fine wine, and beautiful music, and the king wanted everything to be perfect. At the ball, the king sat on his throne and watched as his guests arrived. They were all dressed in their finest clothes, and they danced and feasted throughout the evening. But then something unexpected happened. One of the guests, a young man named Thomas, began to steal the spotlight. He danced with the queen. He charmed the nobles, and everyone at the ball was talking about him. The king was not pleased. He had worked hard to make this ball the most spectacular event of the year, but now no one was paying attention to him. They were all focused on Thomas. The king felt humiliated and angry, and he wanted to do something to make Thomas pay for what he had done. The king called Thomas into his throne room. He was furious. "How dare you steal the spotlight from me?" he demanded. "I am the king, and everyone at the ball was supposed to be focused on me, not you." Thomas was scared, but he tried to explain. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," he said. "I didn't mean to steal the spotlight. I was just having fun." But the king wasn't having it. "That's no excuse," he said. "You have to understand that I am the master, and you are just a guest. You must never outshine the master." With that, the king banished Thomas from the kingdom, never to return. So why did the king banish Thomas? Why was it so important for him to be the center of attention? As we've already seen, the king was feeling humiliated and angry. Thomas had stolen the spotlight, and everyone was talking about him instead of the king. The king's ego had been wounded, and he needed to do something to make himself feel better. But there is another reason why the king was so angry. It had to do with the way Thomas had been behaving at the ball. You see, Thomas wasn't just a random guest at the king's ball. He was a young man who was trying to get ahead in life. He knew that if he could make a good impression on the king, he would be rewarded with a noble title and a seat at the king's court. So Thomas had been planning his outfit for weeks. He wanted to look impressive and important. And he thought that by dancing with the queen and charming the nobles, he would make the king jealous and give himself a better chance of getting a reward. In other words, Thomas was trying to use the king's wife and friends to get ahead. And that's why the king was so angry. It's one thing to try to impress the king, but it's another thing entirely to try to use his wife and friends to do it. Thomas had crossed a line, and the king was going to make sure that he never forgot it. The story of Thomas and the king teaches us an important lesson about how to behave when we're trying to achieve our goals. If you want to make a good impression on someone who has more power than you, don't try to use their friends or family to do it, and don't try to outshine them. Remember, the person with more power is always the master, and if you try to outshine them, you will never succeed. Do you agree with the king's decision to banish Thomas? Why or why not? Have you ever tried to outshine someone who had more power than you? What happened? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. And if you liked this story, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload.